Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The call came late on a Sunday evening when the city had begun to sink into its quiet winter gloom. I was alone in my apartment, bent over my desk, my eyes swimming over the tiny numbers on my latest dataset. It was the first promising result I'd seen in months, a faint glimmer that maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild what had been torn apart. The phone's ring cut through the silence. I almost didn't answer. But when I saw Mother on the screen, something in my chest tightened. "Melissa," she said, her voice taut, almost metallic. "It's Philippa. She's dying. Aggressive leukemia. The doctors, they say you're her only match for a bone marrow transplant." The pen slid from my hand. My throat tightened. Even hearing Philippa's name was enough to pull me back into the wreckage. The whispered rumors, the board meetings, the sudden, humiliating end to 7 years of research. Her work. "You're calling me," I said slowly after everything she did. "This is your sister." My mother's voice cracked into a sharp edge. "Family is family, Melissa. You don't abandon blood." Blood? I almost laughed. When she accused me of falsifying results, when she convinced Dr. Tanner to lie, where was your sense of family then? "That's in the past," she snapped. "Right now she's in a hospital bed, and without you she will die. Can you live with that?" The question lodged like a splinter. I didn't answer. Instead, I let the silence stretch until I heard her sharp exhale. "I'll think about it," I said finally, my voice flat. Before she could speak again, I ended the call. For a long time, I sat in the dim light, staring at nothing. Outside, the wind rattled the bare branches against the window. Somewhere deep in me, anger and something colder began to mix. If I was going to face Philippa again, it wouldn't be as the sister she could guilt into compliance. It would be as someone she could never betray again, and this time I would hold the leverage. 2 days after the call, I found myself in the fluorescent sterility of Street Catherine's hospital. I had agreed to the preliminary testing, not out of kindness, but curiosity. If Philippa's life dangled from a thread tied to me, I wanted to see the thread with my own eyes. The nurse was brisk, barely glancing at me as she drew the vials. "You'll get the results in 48 hours, she said. Her voice was flat, routine. 48 hours later, the results came, and shattered what little I thought I knew. I sat in Dr. Murray's cramped office as he adjusted his glasses, reading the report again as if he didn't believe it either. "Melissa, this is unusual," he began. "The HLA match is extremely close, but the DNA markers suggest you and Philippa are not biologically related." I blinked at him. "That's impossible. She's my sister." He shook his head. "At least not from the same father. The data is clear." My mind replayed my mother's righteous fury, her speeches about family and blood. They rang hollow now, almost absurd. That evening, I drove straight to her house. She opened the door, her expression tight. "Melissa, I was about to call." "Don't," I cut in, stepping inside. "Who is he?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. "I don't know what you... Don't lie to me." My voice cracked through the living room. "The tests show Philippa and I don't share a father. So who is he?" For a moment, she looked like a statue, rigid and cold. Then her eyes flickered. "Patrick Walker," she whispered as if the name might break the air. The name meant nothing to me yet, but the tremor in her voice told me it would. When I left her house that night, the cold air bit into my cheeks. I didn't feel like a sister or even a daughter. I felt like a detective, and my case had just begun. It took me less than a week to find him. Patrick Walker wasn't hiding, not exactly, but he lived in the kind of quiet suburb where people never expected trouble to knock on their door. I stood across the street from his modest brick house, hands buried in my coat pockets, my breath turning to mist in the cold air. I had imagined this moment 100 ways, but nothing prepared me for the reality. The man who stepped onto the porch, mug in hand, looked ordinary. Warm eyes, graying hair, a cautious gait. Not the villain I'd built in my mind, yet undeniably the key to this unraveling truth. I crossed the street. Patrick Walker. He looked at me, puzzled. "Yes, do I know you?" "No," I said, my voice sharper than intended. "But you should have." He frowned. "I'm sorry, you have a daughter," I cut in. "Her name is Philippa. She's dying. And my mother is the reason you never knew." His mug trembled in his hand. What are you saying? I told him, not everything, not yet, but enough. Enough for the color to drain from his face. Enough for him to whisper, my God, all these years. Inside, he sat across from me at a small oak table. The walls were lined with photographs, a life lived without us. He asked for details, and I gave them in measured doses, watching the weight settle on his shoulders. Why now? He asked finally. Why come to me? Because I want the truth, I said. And because Philippa's running out of time. If you want to see her, you'll have to face my mother first. And you'll have to know exactly what she's done. He nodded slowly, something fierce sparking in his eyes. Then let's make sure she can't hide anymore. When I left his house, the winter air felt sharper, almost electric. The face of a stranger had just become my most unexpected ally, and together we were about to drag every buried lie into the light. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and quiet desperation. I stood outside Philippa's room, the muted beep of machines pulsing through the door like a warning. My conditions were clear in my mind, carved in stone. I wasn't here to be swayed by tears or guilt. When I stepped inside, Philippa looked smaller than I remembered, her sharpness dulled by illness. But her eyes, though sunken, still carried that glint, the one that had watched my career burn without blinking. You came, she rasped, her voice cracking. I'm not here for a reunion, I said, pulling a folded sheet of paper from my bag. These are my terms. She glanced at the page. Terms? Yes, I said evenly. You signed this confession, every detail of what you did to destroy my work. And it goes to the journals, the board, everyone who needs to know. And you should know the truth. We have different fathers. Your father is Patrick. I found him and met with him. Mom hid from him that you were his daughter, and now he wants to get in touch with you. Our mother publicly admits to the affair and to manipulating me, and Patrick gets full access to you. No hiding him again. Her lips twisted in surprise. I didn't know that. I want to meet him too. You're using this to punish me. I'm using this to make sure the truth survives you, I said. The door opened. Mother walked in, her expression taut. Melissa, this is cruel. What's cruel, I cut in, is 7 years of my life reduced to rubble, because you both decided lies were more convenient. This is the price of my marrow. Accept it or she dies without it. Silence. Philippa's gaze slid to Mother, who looked suddenly old, her composure cracking. If I do this, she whispered, will you save her? If you both do this, I corrected. Philippa's hand trembled as she took the pen. The scratch of ink on paper was the sound of leverage turning into victory. I pocketed the signed confession, my pulse steady. For the first time in years, I wasn't the one cornered. Outside the room, Patrick waited. Well, he asked. They agreed, I said. Now the real work begins. And I meant it. Truth was a door we just forced open, and nothing on the other side would be the same again. The confessions went out within 24 hours, to the board, to the journals, to every shadowed corner where my name had been dragged. By the end of the week, the official retractions began. My inbox filled with apologies dressed in formal language. None of them erased the years I'd lost, but they did something rare. They gave them back to me in a different form. Vindication. Philippa's treatment started almost immediately after the transplant. Patrick was there for every session, speaking to her in a quiet, steady way. She listened. That alone felt like a miracle. One afternoon, weeks later, we met in Patrick's kitchen. Mother was there too, hands wrapped around a cup of tea like it might anchor her. I can't undo what I did, she said, her voice raw. But I'm sorry. For all of it. Philippa met my eyes. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. But I want to try to be better. Honest. I held her gaze for a long moment. Then start with today. Patrick smiled faintly. How about dinner? All of us. No lies, no old grudges at the table. The words hung in the air like an untested bridge. I nodded. All right. Let's see if we can walk across. Outside, the winter had begun to soften. For the first time in years, I felt the weight on my chest ease. Not gone, but lighter. Sometimes victory isn't fire and ruin. Sometimes it's the fragile, stubborn light that grows in the ashes. And I was ready to see where it could lead us.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.